question, well, did you really threaten those clerks? This had to do with the previous case regarding Russell. Now, I didn't answer her question directly because I didn't want to join her with that question.
Never take jurisdiction.
So think about this now. She says, did you threaten to through those judges? Well, if I would have took that sentence and possessed it, no, I didn't. I just took jurisdiction of it. I said, well, I don't want to sue anybody if I don't have to. It hadn't to do anything with a threat because I wasn't going to answer that kind of a question because it's a trap. See, I'll explain this a little farther down. But then she said, well, Mr. Gunch, do you have anything else to add? And being I was up on the third level in that court and everybody else was down below or in a box, I says, well, I'm in a different world than I used to be, and we're in two different worlds. The judge looked at me, she turned her chair and looked at me and had a twinkle in this eye and kind of winked because nobody else could see it, and I was sitting looking at her. And she made her ruling, and no one else was the wiser. And what it did was it safeguarded her because she joined with me, brought me where I needed to be. My wife was in court too. She was down the lower plane. She had a clue of what was going on, but she didn't even have a full clue of what was going on. And we walked out. And I walked out in as good or better shape than I walked in because now that attorney knew all the violations he committed as far as rules of continuance of evidence, all the incriminating things he could ever drag up that had no bearing on the subject matter. It was all vacated. It was as if nothing had even happened. And this goes to show you that if the judge knows that you know what they know, because that was a veiled statement that I said to the judge. I don't want to sue anybody if I don't have to. I more or less said, lady, you screw up, I'm going to sue you because I know that you know and you know that I know, so you do your job right. Now I'll give you the example of the significance of that statement. We went into court with another guy who was an appraiser who had done an appraisal, and the charge was $2,500 for some people. They were unhappy with his appraisal, so they filed small claims suit on him. And he didn't know a whole lot, but we told him to do a few things because what had happened. The people got their loan and everything that the appraisal was for was correct. They just thought that he undervalued their property. And so they were going to sue him. They figured they wouldn't have to pay him. But anyway, he came in and he says, my name is such and such and such in the noun, and I'm here claiming the Title IV. And the judge says, you can't claim Title IV. Do you recognize what just happened? When the judge said you can't claim Title IV, you're right. When the judge said you can't claim Title IV, he had to take jurisdiction of it in order to make a ruling. So he actually joined when he says you can't claim Title IV. The very opposite of what he said was true, because in order to make a ruling, he had to take jurisdiction of that statement, and so therefore he joined.
Can I stop you for a second?
Go ahead.
One of our judge buddies told us we're always, no, I'm not going to divulge his name, but off the record, he met with me and Gordon.
Yeah.
And he said, we're always lying to you.
Most of the time, if you take what they say and turn it on on its head, it would be closer to the truth.
So whatever they say, it is a dead lie. It will be the exact opposite. If they say, oh, good, it's oh, crap. If they say, you know, it's hard to say. It just depends on
you got to know where you're at.
You have to know who you are and where you're at all times. So
yeah.
That's just coming from judges' words of mouth, and we have lots of judge friends. We're friends with a lot of them because they're cool with Gordon and I. One of the things I will say is this. Okay, why I say start with the small stuff. The judges that are in the lower courts are far less knowledgeable. Okay, the reality is that when you get into your higher courts, the judges are far more knowledgeable, and if you know more, you'll actually achieve remedy easier in the higher courts than you will in the lower courts. The reason why I recommend going in on small stuff, traffic stuff, is because the judges know less, and you'll actually learn more because the judges know less. And so it's harder to achieve remedy in the smaller courts, but there's less at risk. I mean, if you get, you know, so you got to pay maybe a small speeding ticket. I don't know how they run here. Say you got a speeding ticket or parking violation or something. That's where there's not a whole lot at risk, but you can learn a lot because you can get a dialogue going between you and the judge. Secondly, it removes some of the fear issues so that you can think, because fear is real debilitating. Some people just can't handle that. If it's something that you can't handle, don't do it. We're not saying this is for everybody because it's not. Okay?
But the language procedure number 1 is where we start. That is so imperative because everything you do stems from a thought process. And when we begin to be able to see what the truth is for what it really is, it will change
your life,
your entire life, because you'll begin to see who we or who you in the reality are.
And you're all capable of it. Just the fact that you're here today shows that you've been oppressed at some point and that you know that something is wrong. And I had my hats off to all of you here today.
Okay. Is there any, what would be another specific thing?
I was going to answer this gentleman's question down here.
Okay.
According to Stefan's question about the stamps and the importance of stamps.
Yeah.
My uncle, this was 3 years ago, we were in a state district court. Well, he was. He was involved in an action where his grandpa, he owns an excavating company. Mm-hmm. And my grandpa, who was 84, was in the backhoe driving on the shoulder. And my uncle was behind him in his dump truck. And a guy come around the corner and come in and hit my grandpa and knocked him into another car. Well, this action started back in, I think, 90 or 89 or 90. And my uncle, you know, has a little bit of money, so the attorneys see, easy prey, got him. So they start out in a city court. And my uncle, you know, like a good person, goes and hires an attorney. Of course, he gets found not guilty. You know, the trial lasts about 6-7 months. Gets found not guilty, you know, fees go up. Well, the prosecution comes back in and files in a county court saying, oh, that can't be right, that can't be right. Come on, attorney, let's try this out again. So he sues my uncle again, same charge, because nothing was processed. So the same scenario goes around for about four times. And then back in, I believe it was 98. God, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Back in 98, I'm like, no, enough is enough. I said, I'm coming down there. Fire that piece of crap. I'm coming to court. And we file in a charter vessel contract. And we file it, you know, coming in as the witness to safeguard the court. So we get there, and we do this about 48 hours before he has to be into this. And we're in a state district court. It was 13th District Court, Colorado, Chaffee County, Wyoming, Colorado. Yeah. And I stroll in there, and I wheel in my 85-year-old grandpa. By this time, he's already, you know, 85 years old, up at there in age. And I'm feeling pretty sorry for my uncle. My mom, this was the first time she, you know, my mom's very concerned about her boy, of course. Yeah. And we stroll on into court, and my mom is very nervous. And I'm like, no, this is incorrect. This is not right. We got some procedural questions here. So we address stamps. We address bills of lading, unprocessed, through the years, through stacks and stacks. So we stroll on into court. I step through the bar, of course, capture the judge right out the chute. Title IV flag. He goes, oh, good. Looks at the paperwork, and we, you know, we're Title IV flag, Unity-States, you know, go through the scenario in the noun with our noun names, and start addressing the procedure. And the judge takes a look at all this, and he turns all red. He starts turning red because they've all been caught. They want to get my uncle for $32 grand, and he's got like $32 grand, another $32 grand on top of unpaid lawyer fees. You know, he's like, he was unsatisfied with his lawyer, but he agreed to keep him. And that, you know, it was a con job. And so we start addressing procedure. And the judge looks at it and goes, you're right. There is no procedure here. And then I turned around and started attacking the language on how my uncle was immune from everything. Okay, let me show you a little example to show you how simple this is. When we're taught to write a letter in fiction,
need this?
No. We write our letter, dear so-and-so, da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. We place our authorization on the bottom, taking jurisdiction of the subject matter which we've just created. Would everybody agree with that? But what happens when they move this person up here with the rules of continuance of evidence? He is immune from everything after his name. So what are Jack and Jill responsible for that they taught you in first grade? Absolutely nothing.
Jack and Jill ran up the hill.
Absolutely nothing. You've been duped. You've all been programmed. Very simple once you figure it out. So you must follow the rules of continuance of evidence. So anyways, We start systematically tearing apart this judge. Future tense, past tense, all over the map. And he's sitting there and he's going like this. And of course, at this time, you know, the security guards didn't know, and the cops, the sheriffs didn't know what was going on. My mom was real nervous. And my uncle's kind of a shy guy, kind of quiet. And I got him just roaring, just screaming. I'm just laughing at my uncle, you know, having a good time. Yeah. And he's bellowing out what I'm telling him to say. And the sheriffs are sitting back like this, and they're coming to, and they stand up and they're looking. I'm like, pal, forget it, sit down. and we proceed to systematically tear the language apart. Well, the point being that language meant something. And the judge from the bench goes, you know what? There is no language in my court, and there is no procedure. He turned, and I go, objection, Your Honor. If there's no language in this court and there is no procedure, then why are we here? Get out of my court! Slaps his gavel. You get out of my court! Objection, Your Honor. You have 120 days to join with the Title IV flag of the Unity Hyphen States of America. No! Slaps his gavel. Oh, you attorneys, he says, pay each other, and you get out of here. I'm going, objection, Your Honor. You have a, he just took off a running. I'm going. Haven't heard from the guy's since. It's so simple. It's just stay on point. Yeah. Just stay on point. There's no reason to be scared of anybody when you know. If you take a very humble and honest approach at what you are doing and know what you are doing, you're going to have a lot of success. Especially here in Canada, believe it or not, there is hope, because when we went to court, even though their paperwork was out of order, they were flying Canadian flags in the court. And I guess that was the first time someone had said they'd ever seen a Canadian flag flying in the court. I had a little incident. I had my... They did have the spear. Hey, they have the spear in the States. But Army Regulation 840-10 2-5 clearly states order of precedence. Yes. Know your order of precedence. Yeah. So if you know those things, you shouldn't have any problems. And you would have to look that up in your, do you have Canadian Army here? Is there a protocol for the Army flags? That's where I would. That's what you need to go in and find out. I would go into that and find out exactly what it is that you're looking at. Another thing that I've noticed in the Canadian courts, that when you come to the Canadian courts, you must file your evidence into the courts when you get there. You must take a certified copy of whatever it is you file. And you've got to come into the land of contract, and you've got to walk up to that clerk and say, from one postmaster to another, place your file stamp on there. You cannot write evidence on there. Whoever's been telling you this is getting you thrown in jail. He does not know nothing about the rules of continuance of evidence, and I'm very sorry that that has happened here in Canada.
You need to know the title site.
And it happens in the States as well.
Yeah. You need to know the title site that orders the performance for the clerk, so that any order that you give has its authority in the law. You need to quantize that into the truthful language and make it your own with your own copy claim. That way you're not making up things as you're going along, so your authority is based in the law. That's necessary.
What's the Canadian equivalent of title?
I believe it's title. Canadian equivalent of the flag, the title site. What is your... To your
where do your Canadian...
What regulates your Canadian...
What's the criminal code?
Criminal code. Being the criminal codes, what would... You got a number here where I can spout out? 337.
Russell?
Yes.
Why don't we bother even with the Canadian flag when we can use a U.S. flag, knowing that?
Well, because you can use. I would. For me personally, I'd do it both ways.
Yeah, I'm saying both ways, but if you put the American flag on the right side, he's got authority over the Canadian flag.
Yes.
And you are protected by the U.S. Army.
Yes.
Well,
you use the U.S.
can, but
regulations.
I'd be connected by the Canadian flag. I got no problem with flying the Canadian flag. Quantize it. I mean, you're Canadian.
Because all the courts are the same around the world.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, yeah, but you're in a Canadian court. So why don't you fly a Canadian flag, stroll on into the U.S. courts and have some fun?
Gordon, when you say titled site, that's C-I-T-E, as in citation?
Well, basically, for instance, what we're real familiar with, I haven't taken the time to study the Canadian codes because we're really working on the developmental end of things, so I haven't taken the time to go into that. So we only had a short, I didn't have too much time to prepare to come up here. The equivalent would be, see, Eric's question is very relevant, okay? You could put the Title IV flag on your documents and use the U.S. codes.
If the judge tells you you can't, you say, Your Honor, if I'm divorced by Canadian law in this court, if me and my ex-wife show up in Tokyo, we are still divorced. You are bound by treaties under the law of the treaties, Article 11 and Article 26 for performance, for good faith, from one postmaster to another. Same thing I did in customs.
See, so the reason why Eric's question is relevant is you can put the Canadian flag on your paperwork. You could put the Title IV flag of the Unity-States of the America, and that Title IV flag would then have precedence within that court. But the fact still remains is this. That judge has to have authorization to join with whichever flag you're claiming. See, because the port, okay, I see where we got a problem. I'm going to back up. Do you ever see a mail truck stop at a port of entry? No. Okay, here's the reason why. The mail is what has authority for enforcement and governs the bills of ladings or contracts. The court, okay, now is a neutral port, just like your port of entry, for negotiations with the contracts, okay? So that judge has to have authorization to join with any flag. You could put any flag on that contract that you choose to, but the flag and your title sites or the parts of law that you're using within your contract must be in compliance. That's the difference. So that court becomes your court with your flag when you enter into that land of contract, and that judge must have authorization from you in that position to join her for an arbitration of your contract.
But you have, here in Canada, you have to actually be inside the, you notice that the counselors or the Crown people are always inside the well of the court.
Always in the well of the court.
And you're always in the prisoner's box off to the side because they have their evidence in there.
See, if you're in the box, you're removed.
What my other question here is that we're having a hard time here to get the evidence stickers on here, like you've noticed. And the other thing is, in Canada we have a flag, but I don't think we have ground for putting the flag down, because I don't think Ottawa is not like the Washington D.C. where they have at least 10 square miles. We don't even have nothing to put the flag on. I think it's all fiction. I think it's go from England. But my other thought is, if we have a hard time here, if we put a U.S. stamp on it, then we could fight in the States. And the States will take it, and there'll be no problem.
You can put a Canadian stamp on it just as well, just like I did through customs.
But fighting in the States?
I come right through Canadian customs.
Use Canadian codes?
No, I used treaty codes.
Treaty
codes.
International
because I'm
treaties?
a postmaster, and I could prove it. And they knew I could prove it. And they were cool with it. They're very cool with it. If you're in the knowledge that much, they'll be cool with it. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to ask if you could define a little bit more about the meaning of the level 4 flag.
Oh, the Title IV?
The Title 4 flag, so yeah.
Okay.
I'm not quite understanding what you were talking about there.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
You want to get that one? I can. Go ahead, take it.
Go ahead.
Okay. The title... Abbott and Costello, I can prove you're not here, right? The Title IV flag, the reason why it's called Title IV is it flows out of the U.S. titles. The U.S. has codes going through 1 through 50. They call them titles. The
But they're
flag,
not, they're not legal either.
well, they're written in fiction. So what we do is we take those and we take them and we bring them within the truthful language procedure as well as the quantums, okay? Now, what we do then is that specific flag is copy claimed as the Unity-States of the America flag. Interestingly enough, this is one of the reasons why the U.S. had some problems at the UN too, because with some of the, what were those committees or groups that they got?
The genocide
They got kicked off. But to answer your question, the Title IV flag gains its authority out of that site in the U.S. codes.
But it gains itself globally under the law of the flag, which is a global...
So that's why you claim that.
Yes.
If you go back to ancient biblical times, and I'm not going into any theology, don't ask, but what the old bands would do is they'd hoist their flags up to identify the tribe that was coming.
Right.
And this is
the
where
banners.
The banners. This is where it comes from.
The other thing is you'll notice if you go into your airports, all your flags are hung in a suspended manner, okay, which means the contract is suspended. I'll use this as an example. If the flag is flying like this, contract is in force. If it's suspended like this, then it's a banner. The contract is suspended. That's why when you go into your airports, your flags are always hanging like this, because contract is suspended, because that's a neutral port. That's under the Universal Postal Union's authority, because all these planes from all these different nations are flying into these ports. And that is their area of authority.
That's why you can get through there with the stamp.
And so if you know how to contract with your flag and with your postage, you now make yourself a postmaster, and you're now using the international rule, or the international, well, I should say claims, through the treaties of Vienna and whatnot, and you're in compliance with all those, moving yourself as a piece of postage through the ports. And you're doing it within the law, because your postage stamp is a fee for a performance. And your claim is your bill of lading. Like, how many of you have ever been in the trucking business, where you have a manifest which declares or claims whatever you are moving? You know, you've got so many lugs of bananas and so many lugs of apples, and that is what is describing the cargo on that vessel. That's a manifest. What you have on your suit, say for instance, your paper now would be the vessel. If you've been in the if you're a printer, say you've been in the printing business, you have a masthead on top of the document. Well, on the masthead is where you place your flag, the paper being the vessel. The cargo is the thinking, which are the words. See, show me a thought. How do I show you a thought?
There is no court on this planet that can try a fact.
Yeah, see, so we put our thinking, which is the cargo, on that paper, which is the vessel. That's the cargo on the vessel. The flag is on the masthead of the vessel for an advertisement for contract. The postage stamp